Hey, Pastor Steve Waldron here, New Life Pentecostal Church, Albany, Georgia. You know, one of the top questions I get a lot all over is about the Illuminati. Does the Illuminati exist? Well, you know, I used to say no. I didn't even think there was a group called the Illuminati in history. But then I began to study history, and there was a lot of groups called the Illuminati before the one people talk about, May 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt. And then, you know, you had the Alumbrados in Spain in the early 1500s, 1528, and even before that. But I've read about the Illuminati in 1762 and 1761, 1763. But anyhow, so let me just give you just a little brief history of the Illuminati. You can study this in your Encyclopedia Britannicas and your Catholic encyclopedias and, you know, probably YouTube videos, and there's a lot of variation. But it was basically this iteration of what people mean by the Illuminati. And the only reason I've ever studied it is because when you study the Bible, you teach prophecy. And when you get into prophecy, there's what's known as globalism, New World Order. Those terms are not mentioned in the Bible, but it seems clear that, you know, the world is coming back together, and those are just designations people have put upon these processes. So, you know, and so like you had Pat Robertson, who was the son of a senator, who wrote a book on the Illuminati and goes into it. So it is a historical fact that the Illuminati did exist. And a professor of canon law, the first non-Jesuit professor of canon law at the University of Ingolstadt, by the name of Adam Weishaupt. Now, Adam Weishaupt was not George Washington, and he had nothing to do with the founding of America. And so we're going to see if Sister Fran can zoom in here on this. And you might can see it without her zooming in. I'm not sure. I got these little things for Dollar General, so I use them. And I've got a bigger one over here. But, and so it really didn't go anywhere for like years. He had like a lieutenant by the name of Zach. I think his name was spelled like that. And, you know, Adam Weishaupt, you study him, he lived to 1831, and he was quite the philosopher. And he really battled his name escapes me. He's a very popular philosopher. Maybe I'll think about it by the time we get through here. But anyhow, the Illuminati just didn't get anywhere. They came with a lot of degrees, and what's meant by degrees is it's a secret society. As C.S. Lewis would describe it, in that hideous strength. That's one of the best novels that C.S. Lewis, it seems to be, was trying to communicate on how the world works. That it was a series of concentric circles. And I'll show you in just a moment what the symbol of the Illuminati was, because they used the Persian calendar. They used a series of like hidden language, like spy language and all kind of stuff. And some people say they actually worship Zoroastrianism, but whenever they would get to what the Illuminati was, they would always use this sign. This was the sign of the Illuminati. And so that's the reason people today would say, like, oh, Target must be in the Illuminati. The Democratic Party has the circle with the D on the inside. You know, just anything. Maybe the Blaze with Glenn Beck has it. But that could just be marketing too. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Illuminati. So Weishaupt really liked the Jesuits. Now, when I say he liked them, he actually wanted to destroy them, but he also wanted to imitate their ways. He wanted to imitate how they did things with their discipline. And also the kind of the same thing with the Masons, that he really didn't like the Masons, but then he also wanted to imitate their ways. So he would come up with degrees in this. And you can read all this. Is published, and I'm not sure if it's all published in English yet. I need to check on that. But I know like Abbe Bariel and Proofs of a Conspiracy has a lot of this, and Robeson, the book that George Washington had about the Illuminati. Bariel's book is A History of Jacobinism. Robinson's book's Proofs of a Conspiracy. And he wrote in the Encyclopedia Britannica. He was head of the Natural Society in Scotland at a time when Scotland was like everything in intellectualism. It's funny how the religious climate in Scotland, David Hume kind of notwithstanding, Robert Burns, but they just didn't invent it. They had this massive intellectual propensity with a very small country. So everything was cooking along pretty good in the Illuminati till the Council of Wilhelmsbad in, I think that was 1781. I studied all this years ago, and it was a general council, Council of Wilhelmsbad. And I'm probably going to misspell Wilhelmsbad, so forgive me in advance. In 1781. Now, Baron von Nigg, I've read the book he wrote on the Illuminati and his interaction. But it was here at this General Council of Masonry where, kind of by hook and crook, he said, Masonry is pointing towards an ancient society, and I've got the secrets. And so it's estimated that he may have brought in 700 plus people into the Illuminati, and these would have been very influential people, extraordinarily influential people. And of course it was based somewhere near Frankfurt, and that's the reason a lot of people think the Elector of Hesse, which the Hessian soldiers that they used to rent out even fought against the United States, because he was very big into the Masonry anyhow, and since Masonry and large parts of the Illuminati kind of morphed, that happened there. So Nigg actually wrote a book on manners that I think is still kind of big in Germany. I've done some research on that years ago. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but don't correct me on it if you're wrong, if you know what I'm saying. So the Illuminati began to explode, and it was just getting big, and so more and more college professors were getting in it, people in government was getting in it, generals were getting in it, people in high finance were getting in it. And you read Adam Weishaupt, he was very much about abortion. He got a girl pregnant, and it was going to bring reproach because he was supposed to be the incorruptible one, kind of like the leader of the French Revolution was years later, was known as the incorruptible one. And so he's coming up with potions for abortions, and they had all kinds of stuff written out, like for assassinations and character assassinations, journalism. And so it was this worldwide conspiracy, but he was really freezing out von Nigg, and von Nigg had a lot of choice words to say about him. And it seems like Weishaupt was just this iron-willed guy. He was going to have the secret society. Now, you have to think about the days this was. I mean, secret societies were just very common in those days, and not just in Germany. And what became Germany? Obviously, Germany didn't exist till years later. And but what happened in 1785, one of the messengers for the Illuminati was literally writing. This is not an apocryphal story. This is actually a historical fact. A lot of times it's been reported as apocryphal, but it actually happened. And I think sovereignly, like by God, he was hit by lightning and killed. And so when a couple of police officers came, they found these things sewn into the lining of his jacket, all these writings and stuff like that. And they were able to decipher them and they went into, and they always used various names, like one of the leaders of the Illuminati went by Ajax, and Weishaupt was Spartacus. And so, like, you've even got Winston Churchill in the 1920s writing about Spartacus Weishaupt and how communism in Russia was done by Spartacus Weishaupt. So it's still referring to him as Spartacus. And I think some of the communist revolutions in the 1917, 1918 era they were actually called Spartacus. You know, Spartacus. And actually May 1st to this day is an international day of revolution. You know, May 1st. The term May Day actually came because of the Illuminati, that was considered to be such a horrific, heinous thing. It was considered to be this awful thing, as did, because of their circle dot, the putting out of various publications became known as circulars. That all came. And another great source of information is done by the Librarian of Congress, a book I've read multiple times called Fire in the Minds of Men. I've actually done a review on that. I've done a review on Barry L's book and the other. I'm just fascinated with the history of it, because people say, well, is it still around today? I don't know. Who knows? But I don't think it is by that name, but they even said they'd come under different names and all that. And the Librarian of Congress, he does a great job of kind of drawing a line from 1776 to 1917 and saying communism was at least the intellectual heir of the Illuminati and Weishaupt. So this happened. So in these papers, they go and they invade, like, the second in command's house of the Illuminati. They find other stuff and they're shocked. They're like, wow, this is a plot to overthrow all royalty and all religions. They're very anti-religion. And kind of what they do is they'd start you out. I've read through, like, the various, multiple times actually over the years. I'm 52 now, so when I was in my 30s and 40s. But you know, they would start it out very innocuously. You had to keep journals. You had to tell everything about yourself. But it was for the betterment of mankind. That's the reason they were originally known as the Perfectibilist. As a matter of fact, there's a great book that's very, to my knowledge, a very dispassionate book, just about the history of the thousands of people that were in the Illuminati. Very famous names that, you know, like Herder and I think one of the famous composers, I know Franz Liszt, but anyhow, he was in maybe something that came after the Illuminati, but still a secret society type thing. But anyhow, many very famous named people actually got caught up into the Illuminati or had friends, like Mozart. Mozart was somewhere around the Illuminati, so to speak. So they go to close in on Weishaupt and the various leaders of the Illuminati, and Weishaupt is able to go to the Elector of Saxe-Gotha, who was in the Illuminati, and gave him a stipend and gave him sanctuary there at Saxe-Gotha. And so then the Elector of Munich sent out a letter to basically almost the then at least Western world, saying, we have found this plot of they're going to take over all royalty, all religion, all this kind of stuff. And they printed the writings of the Illuminati and made them available for kings, for diplomats to all come and read what was going on at that time. And it kind of made its way into France. Now, this is always one of the fights of history. Did the French Revolution have an Illuminati component to it? And it's rather obvious from history to me that it did. And so after Weishaupt kind of is isolated and spent the rest of his time writing philosophical books till 1831. It kind of, the leadership went to a man by the name of J.J.C. Bode. But like Mirabeau was in the Illuminati. And so people, at that time you had Franklin in France, Ben Franklin, you had Thomas Jefferson. So a lot of people have said, were they ever in the Illuminati? And I don't think so, but they may have been. I do know Jefferson, you can look this up online, you can look this up in mainline histories, unless it's been deep sick somewhere for various reasons, that, you know, at dinner, Thomas Jefferson talked about Weishaupt and said, you know, if I was in Europe, I might lean towards what Weishaupt did, paraphrasing it, because of the, you know, you had to be Catholic, and you know, they did not allow, or Lutheran, or the case whatever you were in, they didn't allow necessarily freedom of conscience in many places, and so it's like forced religion, trying to bring conformity amongst the people. And be that as it may, they wrote to John Adams and asked about the Illuminati and said, can the Illuminati come to America? It's being persecuted in Europe. Can we use America kind of as a base? And he basically gave them a very diplomatic answer and said, you know, as long as you're not coming to suborn and, you know, cause radicalism and all this, we invite everybody here. And as a matter of fact, you know, the Illuminati was famous for having various names for various places. And this is not the time for any of that. This is just stuff off the top of my head from years ago. They referred to the USA as Eleusis. And of course, George Washington, he was very well aware of the Illuminati. You can look those up online. I've done, actually it's on the YouTube channel, I think, of where we show you. This is George Washington writing about the Illuminati. And in his farewell address, he seems to, at least, he's going against Immanuel Kant. And that's who the philosopher that Weishaupt fought was, Immanuel Kant. That, you know, that you can't divorce morality from religion. And that's a Kantian thing, the categorical imperative. But he came against many things. And so he was like, I'm convinced that the Illuminati, and that there's elements of it in the United States, but overall the Masonry in the United States would be what's known as Continental Masonry. And there's a big thing, Continental Masonry versus Grand Orient Masonry. And people that believe the Illuminati is still in existence would say that it functions primarily through the Nine Sisters Lodge of Grand Orient Freemasonry in Paris, France. And you know, and I would say the French Revolution really had this massive component of Illuminism in it, with the Duc d'Orleans and the Temple of Reason, and that's what they worship. They, you know, as you made your way up to the levels of the Illuminati, you finally learned in their mind that reason, they worship the God of reason, so to speak, and that reason, that humanism, there was no God. And as C.S. Lewis would say, they'd make you spit on the cross, urinate on the cross, and all that. And that seems to go back to the Knights Templar. And did Weishaupt just come up with all this stuff out of his mind? Well, I'll just give you a few things here. Knights Templar. You know, Dan Brown, his Angels and Demons are all about the Illuminati and all this. But the Knights Templar, your Sabbateans, your Frankists, some people say that it comes through there, you know, the Eliminate the Opiate book, Rabbi Antelman, I've read that book a couple times. There's other influences, they're escaping me right now. Or did he just come up on it in his own? Some people talk about a Jewish person that met Weishaupt. I think that is a historical record. But, and I don't remember if it was one of the Mendelssohns or whoever, but I don't think the Illuminati is this Jewish thing. It's just not. Because Weishaupt was, people say Weishaupt was a Jesuit. Not to my knowledge, he hated the Jesuits. And and hated the Catholic Church, wanted to destroy the Catholic Church. So you have these pre-Illuminati things and many more influence that were possible on Adam Weishaupt, but maybe he just started something that stood alone. And with the faculty there, certain faculty there at the University of Ingolstadt and certain of his students at the University of Ingolstadt, and then it really blew up at the Wilhelmsband Council of Masonry with the influence of Baron von Nigg. And so now another little known fact of history is the election. Was it the 1800 election between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had a humongous Illuminati component to it, because the John Adams segment with your Timothy Dwight, which was the grandson of Jonathan Edwards, and he was also president of Yale at the time. And then your Morse, the guy who came up with Morse code, his dad, Samuel Morse, I think it was. One of them's F.B. Morse, one's Samuel Morse. I'll probably have those confused. But they came and they basically said that Thomas Jefferson was in the Illuminati. And they began to preach sermons in 1797, 1798, that the Illuminati was a real threat and it was in America. And another little known factoid of history is that possibly there was at least a little bit what's known as the Alien and Sedition laws. Think about the Alien and Sedition laws had to do with the American sphere of the Illuminati. And so, and like Seth Payson wrote a book about the Illuminati in 1802, and then I've got this old book about, a reprint of an old book, about the Clintonian faction of the Illuminati, the Columbian faction of the Illuminati. And see, America used to be known as Columbia. That's where the term District of Columbia came from. And so when it says like the Columbia broadcast, so like when I do old Bible reviews, there's a famous Bible from like 1799, huge, beautiful family Bible, known as the Columbia Bible, because America was known as Columbia, strangely enough. And but yeah, the election between John Adams was vituperative and had a huge Illuminati influence. And so Vernon Stauffer in 1917 wrote a great book. I think it was actually a college thesis that turned into a book about the Bavarian Illuminati in New England or something like that. Fascinating read. I think I've read that a couple times. So that's just a little history of the Illuminati. Hope it helped you. And I try not to get into conspiracy theories. I'm more like a historian, college professor kind of guy. So I'm just not into conspiracy theories. But what facts are, I mean, if facts say there are conspiracies, then there's a conspiracy. But, I'm just into facts. I just want what the truth is. But really, and so people, like, they want to fight against the Illuminati. They want to blah, blah, blah. Look, the scripture tells us we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, rulers of darkness, spiritual wickedness in high places. So like a third of the world could be the Illuminati, and we're still supposed to pray for them, love them. Jesus died for them, and pray. God does great things. So don't get called up. Don't let the people of this world keep you from building that wall, Nehemiah. You just keep working for Jesus. Hallelujah. Don't let Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabian keep you. Geshem the Arabian keep you from doing work for Jesus. I love you. God bless you in Jesus' name.